So I'm going to talk about failing to get a game on the App Store, but I nearly wasn't here, actually. I was in Brighton at a 40th, and somebody put some diesel in a petrol car, a bit of failure there. And also, I asked them if they could swap over my presentation, and it was too late, because I might mess up the whole thing. And so actually, the first person to tweet me the failure to spelling check on my presentation, I'll give a free copy of one of our premium games. So. Anyway, to get into it. So the App Store is very important for us who make games because it's one of the storefronts by which people find what we make. There's nothing more depressing than being a games designer to produce stuff that no one sees. And this is some of the typical stuff we do in making a game. So at the top, you can see the design, which is my bit. There's some code there. There's a 3D model of a creature. And then there's some sound design stuff. And we kind of assemble all that together. And this is a fairly traditional game. This is one of an earlier game I designed called Call of Cthulhu. And that took a small team of us about a year to make. And it's got zombies in. It's got monsters. It's got magic. It's got all that kind of stuff. It's the sort of thing you're completely used to in a game. And that's normal. But what I started thinking was actually, there's an area of games I really want to get into, which is still a developing field called news games. And in news games, what you're doing is you're using games to reflect the real world. So actually, as a games designer, my natural way to think about the world around me is as a gamic system. And as a gamer myself, the natural way often to understand things is through the lens of the games that I play. And there's a lot of research showing that people who play games already think about questions of democracy and values and things like that through the games. So one of the issues I really want to get to with this is that actually to talk to people who are gamers about the world, the best thing to do is speak the language of games. But the problem is that most people perceive games to be fun. That's all they are. They're entertainment, nothing else, nothing more. So when you say, I want to talk about a serious subject with games, I'm going to make a game about the civil war in Syria, most people look at you like, that is the worst idea possible. How could that do anything but fail? And we did in some respects. But to me, actually, no. Games as an interactive medium offer a really useful thing. They offer us, they're a nonlinear medium, so you can repeat the process and take different decisions. You can do one thing, get an outcome, do another thing, get a different outcome, and learn from those. So I think games have a lot to bring to the table. But not everybody agrees with me, and this is why I think most people, when you say, we're doing a game about a war, they imagine something like this. First-person shooters, and I can understand the nervousness of that. This is a real war, a real situation, and people are really dying. And that's never far from my mind in working on a title like this. You have to respect the source material. The other thing with the news game, which is different from the game I showed before, is that it needs to be made fast. When we were making this originally, there was been an assassination attempt on Assad's inner circle. The whole regime was crumbling. The speculation within the media is they're about to fall. And so to make the game timely, as a news game, you need to get it out relatively fast as a news report. That's not to say this game is the definitive game that covers this situation, far from it, any more than the individual news report is the definitive history of that event. But you can see there on the 9th, we were hoping to get the App Store in. It takes basically about a week to get a game through the App Store, and so that's why that was a key date coming earlier than that. And then we got it out on Android and the HTML5 after that. And this is some of the design stuff we were doing, so you sort of get the gist of it. Now, what I wanted people to do is come away from the game understanding more about the situation than when they went in. That was really what I was after. And it had this intermingling of the ground war phase and the political phase between the two things in a card game. The games press totally got what we were trying to do, and they really understood how games can be used for more than that. The mainstream media are a little bit, yeah, you're appealing to the youth, we like that, but not sure about that. And so there was a mixture of some journalists really supportive of what we do, others a little bit unsure how to take it. Apple, a high-tech technology company, actually, they didn't get it. And interestingly, when you dig into the terms and conditions of what you can and can't do on the App Store, it turns out they have this phrase which says, if you want to criticize religion, write a book. It's as if somehow by writing a book, nothing can fail in that. People can't misinterpret what you say. No one's ever written a book that's had any kind of failure consequences, have they? Whereas games, all the time. So we tried very hard to get it through, and we went through a number of iterations. And in the end, one of the representatives of Apple rang me up and he said, well, this is Brian from Apple in California. He said, the way I can see you can get through our App Store is if you take out any reference to Syria, it will be fine. And so we thought, all right, we will actually. So we created Endgame Eurasia, which is from the 1984, the novel, and we put a few references in there. And ultimately, it got news coverage, people talking about that. But the real key take-home from that is that As a game that looks at an issue that us as a democracy, should we arm the rebels, which was my original inspiration going into it, the decision on whether or not this came out, whether or not people would look at it, explore my point of view, our point of view, a gamer point of view, was actually being taken out of our hands. If something's not there, how do you know it's not there? How can you appreciate our failure to cover the war properly through the term of a game if you can't even see it? Apple are making the decision for you that we failed before we've even started, and I think that's a real mistake. We have to ask the questions of these big organizations that have huge amounts of power over what we see and don't see, and that's really important. After that, we made a game about the war on drugs and what could possibly have gone wrong with that. But that's my short story of what failure led me to realize, which is where the power lies really, and actually, and we need to look at that as people who respect democratic values, how that can reflect back on what we do. So, thank you very much.